My name is Wesley Herrera. I have I have 2 degrees from Texas State University. I got one in microbiology, and I graduated, I believe, like last week, almost last week, with my CLS degree. I'm about to take my certification exam tomorrow. Tomorrow actually. Um, let's see. I have a job lined up in the Houston area, and I have like a lot of like research experience, and also like working in a small lab type of experience as well.
What drew you to clinical microbiology?
So for me, what drew me to clinical microbiology is kind of like the same story I've always told. So when I was coming into college, I kind of wanted to become a medical oncologist or a cancer doctor. But my sophomore year of my first major, I was taking like a regular microbiology class, and so at that time we started doing like our unknowns, and so whether that was like looking under the microscope to see what morphology was, or like following this flow chart to see like okay if it grows like this, grow up like this, or if it grows up like another way, do this. And so with that kind of method, I kind of um, fell in love with it because it like allowed me to be like a little investigator per se. And so for me, that was something that I always liked about the class. And so after that class, I actually researched like how to become a clinical microbiologist, like what were the requirements and everything. And so I figured out that I needed to have like a CLS degree and a certification with it to become a clinical microbiologist. And so, once I learned about that and like researched about like where CLS programs are offered, I realized that Texas State had one. And so, about like 2 years later, I applied and got in. So,
Nice. So then, what's been your favorite part of your training journey so far?
uh, for me, it was like seeing like for rotations, like we'd have to go like anywhere, like whether that was San Antonio, which is like an hour away from San Marcos, or like Austin, which might be 30 minutes away, or anywhere in between. For me, I liked seeing how the different labs operate because while they're different, different protocols and everything. For me, seeing how sometimes similar the lab was like, really helped me to like was a fair part of my journey because I was able to see like how busy labs are compared to other labs, and you get to really find out about where do you like working. Like, do you like working in a small size lab, a medium size lab, or like a large size lab? And so for me, I was really able to see how labs differ from each other. So
And what about your least favorite?
we should have to like the drive because sometimes like if you're going to San Antonio, for example, like you have to wake up super early because like some hospital might want you there like at 6:45 in the morning, and so you have to wake up like at maybe like 4 to get ready and leave by 5 and everything. And so, or even like going to Austin, like you get 30-minute drive on paper, but like especially on Monday morning, like if you don't leave at the correct time, like you're gonna be stuck in traffic for like 2 hours trying to get over there. So it's also like Lee Saver was like trying to time manage everything because not only are you a student at rotation for like 8 hours a day, like you also have to come home and do work. And so trying to find that balance between the two, where maybe you can knock some work out at your rotation, or like you kind of have to set like a list of yourself of how to finish it. It was always like the difficult part of these rotations.
So, it's to my understanding you do a clinical placement within your degree. Do you have any advice for, because we've previously spoken on ID transmission with Rodney Brody, who you know, and one of his alumni, and he says obviously that there's a clinical placement shortage at the moment, and that makes it really difficult for students to get in. For those who might be applying at the moment or about to apply for their clinical placements, what advice would you have for them?
I would say like for applying like really or even when like going to clinical rotations, like you always want to ask like questions because asking those questions can help you further benefit later on and like maybe when you're applying to jobs or something like that. Like For example, if asking questions about a simple technique or like um, even just the technology to use, how it works, how do you clean certain stuff, or how often do you run quality control. It's like something that will benefit you because some other labs might use the same automation as they use. And so kind of like figuring out how it works already for one laboratory and then transferring to one other laboratory that uses it kind of gives you like a little heads up or a little advantage because you already know how it works and everything. And so um, that would probably be the advice that I can like. And also be pretty friendly with the preceptors because like I said, like a lot. This is a small field, and so every time everybody kind of knows everybody, and so doing good at like one rotation will help you further on in the field if you're trying to get a job at a similar location for that matter.
So when you were doing yours, did any things about the lab surprise you when you started it?
Uh, for me, it would be like how busy the lab is because I've always kind of pictured what a lab is like and everything, but actually seeing how the lab works and just seeing how much testing they do, for example, um, really kind of shocked me when I got in. Like I was kind of scared to kind of go into the lab field because what if I don't like it, anything that matter. But um, after working in several labs and everything, I think I found like my love for it. So
So then you are, correct me if I'm wrong, you're the secretary for the Society of Clinical Laboratory Science. Now that you've graduated, are you still the secretary, or is that a role that you've
yeah.
now moved on from? But if you are, then well, regardless, tell us about the society and what made you want to get involved in that.
So like the society is kind of based on, really helping out or really spreading the word about like CLS and what a profession is and what a program does. And so we really, we're made up of like seniors and like juniors and even pre-CLS students who are interested in applying to the program. And so what we do is, like I said, it's about spreading the word of like our program. And so we try to do that in a variety of ways. Like for example, we were involved in Bobcat Days, I believe it's called. And so purpose of that is to interact with the new freshmen coming in. And so, if so with them is like, trying to talk about like if they're interested in the field or in the program, is like talking about what we do and like, what it's like to be a student in there and try to convert them into like CLS because, students in my place, might do a 4-year program for microbiology and think they can work in the hospital labs. In reality, they can't. And so, trying to convert them into like CLS majors and explain the program to them is like what we do. But we also try to get involved with the community. So we participate in an event called Bobcat Build, where we try we're sent to like a location and we're kind of like volunteers to help out with the community, whether that's gardening or like painting a house or like picking up trash. Like we're really involved with that, and we're also involved with, like fundraising. Like for example, we this past or when I was in an officer, we did like a taco sale, breakfast taco sale. And so, that money that we get back is, not only for us to spend, but it's also like giving it back to the students or in that society, where that's like, paying for like their, maybe their drug test or paying for something for that matter. We try to really help out the people in our field per se.
I love that. That sounds really great. So you've graduated now, right? So what are you sort of briefly mentioned it a bit at the start, but what are your post-graduation plans?
Uh, but it's not like it's for sure not any school in a really in a short amount of time. So for me, like I said, I already have a job lined up in Houston in like I think in 2 weeks where I start working. So I have that, like that's my major post graduation plan. But I do plan on going back to school, maybe a couple years down the road. 6 years is really a lot of schooling right now. So taking a break, but I eventually go try. I eventually plan to go back, maybe get my infectious disease degree, or even like a medical microbiology degree as well. Um, I also do have plans on like specializing in maybe micro or another department in the laboratory as well in the meantime. But um, that'll be my major graduation plans. I do also plan on being an educator as well. I feel like giving back to or learning what I was taught and learning what I was in the field and giving it back to students is something that I think is really beneficial to them.
That sounds great. So when you say that you might go back and do your, for example, your infectious disease degree, so the what you've got right now for people who might be just going into the field, what's the typical route? So do you need to go back and get more postgrad qualifications to work in certain areas? Are you able to just go straight into the workforce like maybe you are with the degrees that you have?
So be like with my MLS degree is what you're asking, like what's route?
Yeah, so I guess because obviously there's so many areas that you can go into. So what's the so with the degrees that you have now, then is it you can then choose to specialize in certain areas post graduation? How does that work?
So like for a typical MLS degree, you have to do like 2 years of like your basic classes. So it's like your basic biology, your basic chemistry, like everything that's like undergraduate. And then your last 2 years, you apply to the program essentially. And so if you're accepted to the program, then you do your last 2 years are like really focused on just MLS courses, where that's like blood bank, hematology, microchemistry, UA and body fluids, lab management, and everything for that matter. And then once you graduate, you're able to sit in for an exam, which is the ACP BOC exam, which is like your certification exam or certification. And so once you pass that, you're able to like start working in the labs. Because most labs will want that certification, and so once you get that certification, you work anywhere in the U.S. I think like if you want to work, I think it's like New York, California, Florida. You do have to go through another process to get like licensure because they're the only 3 states in the U.S. that um, really want you to do it, and that's I believe like an extra couple more hours of rotations, and I think you sit in for their exam as well. Um, but then once you get this degree, you can basically take it anywhere you want. You can even specialize, like I mentioned before, in any of the departments. And within that, you have to take another exam that says you're specialized to working this or to working in a certain area per se. And then you get a couple more like letters to your name and everything for that matter. But um, with this degree, you can virtually work anywhere, not only in the lab, but you can work like as a field service operator. You can sell instruments to the other labs. You can go to the research and design if you want to. So this degree really opens up a large path for anyone to take.
Okay, so then what would you find as being the most difficult part applying for postgraduate work at the moment?
So like for me, it was kind of hard because kind of the labs now are getting back to where they were pre-COVID. And so, like in the time of COVID, and there were a lot of jobs available where that was like like San Antonio or like Houston or anything for that matter. And so now we're going back into like how it was before. It's a little hard to kind of apply because most of the labs that I went to and my even friends who went to in the program were all fully staffed. And so we really have to try to connect with like the manager or the director to kind of like communicate with them and try to get a spot in the lab. Like for me, for example, I wasn't applying to anywhere I was like having placements at. And so going to Houston is like a hard market to really break in because, not only are you competing with like the hospitals who do have the programs, you're also competing with like the smaller like community colleges that have other programs as well. And you're competing with people that are coming in or moving into Houston as well. And so overall, you really have to stand out in your application, whether that's how what you did or like maybe how you answer the interview questions or even just your personality to like the lab managers. You really have to kind of stand out in that sense to really get a job right now because it's kind of a tough market per se.
And you sort of mentioned a few then, but are there any ways specifically that you would recommend um, people to stand out the most with their application?
Uh, well, like, really try to put in like your talk about like your honors and like what you achieve maybe in that in your 2 years in the program or any volunteer work that you've done or um, really try to um, really trying to show how you did or what you did in that program and how you excelled in that certain areas and even giving examples of like what you did in the certain labs that you've been to within your rotations, something that really will help you stand out in your application as well.
So, from the perspective of someone who has just gone through their MLS training and is fresh from graduation, how can the laboratory increase interest in recruitment in the field?
So I think that really getting involved with the community and reaching out to the community is something that is really major into increasing numbers into people into the field because for me, for example, I never learned what an MLS was. I've had even through high school, where I had like guest speakers and um, talk about the career and everything. I was never taught about what an MLS is or what they even do, or even they existed. And so, like, really giving back to the community or talking to the community, whether that's like through high schools or middle schools, um, really showing what we do in the field is something that's critical to gaining um, interest and numbers into the field. And so that's why what we do with Bobcat Days is something that's really important as well because we're increasing the numbers and increasing the interest and spreading the word of our profession to like these upcoming students and who always like seem interested in doing so. And so not only that, but for me, what I did personally is like I created like a professional like Twitter account where I only post about MLS content and with that it helped me to really get in contact with like people who are high in the field or who are in the profession already. And so really trying to recruit like what we do and everything for that matter and kind of showing what we do through that Twitter page in the lab is something that I think is critical to getting more numbers in the field.
Nice. I think that's something that I really noticed when I joined the um not the lab. I'm not a lab professional, but I used to work on the Pathologist magazine, which is one of our sister brands,
Yeah,
and how pathologists and laboratory professionals are so active on social media,
yeah,
and they just have this like really lovely community that just welcomes people in.
yeah. Like I know like Dr. Roddy is like very super involved in like spreading the profession and seeing what we do like towards his Twitter account. So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. So then finally, just before we wrap up, what tips would you give to students who are just starting their MLS training?
So, like I said, like, ask questions, whether that's like simple questions or hard questions. That's something vital that I figured out through the MLS training. Um, don't be afraid to ask for help. It's something like really, you don't understand or, you just don't get it. Don't be afraid to ask for help instead of like struggling yourself. That's something I had to kind of learn in like the hard ways. And so, um, don't be afraid to ask for help. And like for me, really because each of the programs is kind of have their own cohort per se, and so really trying to help each other out is something that I think is really vitally important because you know there's a lot of people in that cohort, and so kind of seeing how everybody studies and how you might memorize certain things will kind of benefit you in a way because you're not like stuck in your learning ways. You're also gaining like other learning techniques from other people as well.